All right. Well, in today's video, I'm going to talk about some leadership basics. Because if you don't have the basics down, if you haven't mastered the basics, then it's really kind of hard to be a good leader in the long term. And let me share a little bit about what I mean by that. For the last couple of weeks, I was actually out of town and I was staying at a place where we were on a golf course. And so, for many hours over the last couple of years, or last couple of years, it felt like a couple of years, but a couple of weeks, I would sit and watch people play golf as they were going through the golf course. Now, golf is a game of basics. If you don't have certain basics mastered, you play inconsistently. Sometimes you may have a very good shot, but most of the time it's kind of the luck of the draw if you don't have the basics down. And it got me thinking about some of the basics related to leadership as well. Okay. And that I see a lot of leaders who, they go by the shiny golf club as an equivalent, but they don't have the basics down. And so that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. Is one of the basics that's out there, and there's many. So I'll keep doing videos on this. But it's as if imagine that someone, like I said, they go out and they buy this very expensive, several $100 golf club driver, and they think that because they have that golf club, that now they're going to play better and they can go up there and they can just swing using that fancy golf club, and they're going to hit it straight down the fairway, hundreds of yards, exactly like they want to. But here's the issue, right? Is if they haven't mastered the basics of golf, it doesn't matter what kind of driver you have. You may have some success in the short run. You may get lucky on some of the shots, but the reality is you're not going to be a consistent player. And so, one of those basics of leadership that I want to talk about today relates to respect. And, as I said, unless you master some of these basics, you're going to be inconsistent in your leadership. And so, let me share with you a story of something that happened to me last night. And from this, we're going to draw some parallels as it relates to respect. Because I'm sure some of you listening to this video are like, oh, I got it. I got it. I got it. I understand respect. And I'm a respectful person. Well, you might be surprised that there are certain things about respect that you may not be doing and that you may not have mastered. And so, I want to talk about this. So here's what happened was, last night I went to the grocery store, one of my trips out of the house. And so I go to the grocery store, get all the different, things that we needed, go up to the checkout. There was one check stand open. There weren't very many people in the store. And so I started, loading stuff onto the conveyor belt, whatever you call it, to check out. And so I was emptying the basket. My friend was bagging at the other end. So the two of us were right up there. So I'm, just minding my own business, slowly putting our stuff up onto the conveyor, and all of a sudden, this person walks up and says something that I don't quite understand, because I'm engrossed in what I am doing. And all of a sudden comes right up next to me, between me, and hands the cashier a bag of something, like something from produce or something, a couple of apples in a bag. And I turn around and look at him like, what's going on, right? And just jumps ahead of me as we're in the middle of the checkout. Okay. And so, does that, steps between me and my friend. And so I turn around and say, we're checking out. And he says, "Oh, well, I asked you if it was okay if I went ahead of you." And I said, "Well, I didn't hear what you said, and we're in the middle of checking out." And he kind of backs up a little bit. "Oh, I'm so sorry, bud. I didn't mean it. I thought you were somebody else," and slaps me on the shoulder twice. Okay. So seems like a very, non-businessy related thing, but let's talk about what it relates to from respect. So as I shared that story with you, what do you think are the things that were the respect issues in that particular scenario? And, again, some of you may know, some of you may not know, and that's why we're talking about it today. Okay. So there are certain things about respect and being respectful to other people that often we forget, or we don't know, or we don't practice and master in our daily lives. Okay. So the first thing, right, was this person interrupted me. They interrupted me in the middle of what I was doing. Interrupting someone, when they're talking, interrupting someone when they're in the middle of doing something is not respectful. But how often do we do that? Right? In fact, I have a friend who loves to interrupt me. I may be walking, and all of a sudden, this person jumps right in front of me and starts talking to me, trying to get my attention, right? So interrupting people is a form of disrespect. So you may think, well, I don't ever do that. Well, when you're talking to somebody, do you interrupt them while they're talking to try to make your point? Right? Most of us do. I'm guilty of doing that as well. What else shows up in this particular example? Well, this person uh, got between me and my friend. Now, again, this may be something that you don't actually know, but if a group of people are together, you never walk between a group of people. So if there's a couple walking together, it would be very disrespectful and rude to walk between them, right? And again, if it's a couple, and maybe if they're holding hands, if they're walking close together, we would never think of just barging through, right? That would be rude. But when we break up groups by walking through them, that also is disrespectful. Now, you may see it in other places. A small family is walking and not everybody is together, right? But can you pause and allow them to stay together? Because when you interrupt and break through, that's actually a form of disrespect. You're disrespecting their space. Okay. What else do we learn from this? Well, here's from the title. Okay. Don't touch people without permission. So this man just slapped me twice on the shoulder, right? And he's lucky it wasn't a few years ago, because we would have had an altercation in the supermarket, right? But you don't touch people without their permission. Now, again, you may look at this and think, well, as a leader, what does that have anything to do with me, right? Well, I used to, be responsible for sexual harassment claims and other things like that. And how many of them actually came because people were touching other people? Not necessarily in a sexual way, but if you walk up behind someone who's sitting down and you put your hand on their shoulder, right, without their permission, that's disrespectful. People don't like that. I don't like it when people touch me when I don't give them permission. It's disrespectful, right? So this man was not respecting me by touching me without my permission. Now, you might say again, well, this is just really silly, Jason. No, it's a basic, because the problem is if you are not following the basics and you're disrespecting people, even by doing certain things like this, talking over them, ignoring what they're saying, not listening to what they're saying, not letting them finish their sentence or finish their thought, not acknowledging them, not touching them in ways that they have not given you permission for. Now, again, most of you are saying, "Well, this is really kind of silly. I don't go up and put my hands on my coworkers, like that. I don't slap them on the back." But do you, right? Because again, in a lot of our culture, you'll see things where football season is on right now, and I know it's kind of a custom to pat the guy on the butt when he does something good, right? But again, is that really the right thing to do? Well, if it's acceptable in that, you've given permission and that's okay, then that's okay, right? But it shows up in other places too, right? Like, how often do you try to coerce or expect someone to shake your hand? Well, what if the other person doesn't want to shake your hand, right? Are you going to kind of force them to do that, or just hang out there until they actually do it, even though they feel uncomfortable doing it? Because the reality is, certain people don't like to touch other people. I'm one of those people, and in fact, just this last week, a friend of mine, was chatting up some stranger where we were at, and they were talking back and forth about whatever. And this person goes to leave, and so of course reaches out to shake my friend's hand and turns to me to shake my hand. I didn't shake their hand, right? They kind of put it out awkwardly, and it's like, I wasn't talking to you. I'm not part of this conversation. So I just kind of shrugged and didn't put my hand out. That's even what we're talking about here, right? Is forcing someone or expecting someone to do that. Hey, give me a high five, right? And again, I understand that that's kind of built into a lot of the culture, but expecting someone else to do it without their permission, or kind of forcing or manipulating them into doing it, is not being respectful. And so again, as I'll tell you, if you ignore some of these basics, if you don't master some of the basics, and there's a whole lot more about respect that we can talk about, and I probably will in the future, because again, I see so many leaders that go out and they buy a big leadership course, or they get told how to do something, or they read the latest article, and so they think that, by doing that, now all of a sudden I'm going to be a wonderful leader. But that's the equivalent, again, of buying a beautiful, expensive golf driver, but not having the basics of golf down. So if you want to be successful in the long term, start mastering some of the basics. Start thinking about some of these basic values and make sure that you're living those, right? Because if you don't master the basics, any success that you have is going to be short-lived, or you're just lucky at the time. So with that, I'm going to wrap up today, make it a little bit shorter video, and we'll see you on the next video.